Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Lips, and let's talk about Appium 2 and its new ecosystem. Let's dive in. Appium 2, which has been, officially released for just a few months now, had one big vision, which is WebDriver compatible automation for everything, using the great WebDriver protocol. So if you'd like to get started with Appium 2, we have a great little quick start tutorial at our documentation. We also have a migration guide specifically for people migrating from Appium 1 to Appium 2. There is a whole list of drivers and plugins at our website. Let's go ahead and scroll through that now. You can go through and see all of the drivers and plugins that we know about. And further down the list, we've got, again, a list of officially maintained and third-party plugins. Okay, so here are some of the new drivers specifically that have been released at or around the same time as Appium 2, that Appium 2 made possible. First, we have what's called the Mac 2 driver that enables automation of Mac OS applications, a Roku driver that enables automation of Roku development channels, Tizen TV driver that enables automation of Tizen TV applications, a really interesting HTML driver that lets you actually inject a kind of server into your website and then automate it sort of merely through JavaScript. And this enables automation on platforms where all you can do is put your website onto the platform. There might not be any other development tools that are available for that platform. There's a Linux driver, a Chromium driver now for automating Chrome browsers on desktop, not just on Android, which already existed. And similarly for Gecko or Gecko drivers for automating Firefox. So all of the desktop browsers are now also supported in Appium. We're going to do a little demo of two of these drivers, Mac 2 driver and the Roku driver. So the documentation for the Mac 2 driver is here. I recommend giving, for all of these drivers and plugins, giving the documentation a read before you try and use it. I'm not going to tell you how to use these drivers and plugins. I'm just going to give you a short demo to show you that it works and maybe one interesting thing that each driver or plugin does. Now, there's a ton more. We don't have time to go into it all. This is not a tutorial. But I put the documentation links here so that you can go and dig into this more on your own. I'm just trying to give you a brief tour of the landscape here. I've got an Appium server running with the Mac 2 driver installed. And here's the code. Most of it is boilerplate capabilities and whatnot. Down here is where we have the actual test code, where we're going to launch the calculator app on this computer, which is defined by this bundle ID. And we're just going to add 2 plus 2 in the calculator app and assert that the result, which is shown in the main display element, is equal to 4. So let's give that a go. So there is the calculator app, and you can see that the driver is actually moving the mouse around and clicking the way that a person would. Okay, and our next demo is of the Roku driver. Here is the documentation link for that. The Roku driver is maintained by myself and other folks at Headspin. I don't actually have a Roku device locally attached to my my network where my computer is here, but I do have a Roku that is set up in the Headspin cloud. And this is a picture of what's on the screen of the Roku right now, captured by a camera so we can actually see what's going on. And I am going to run this session. There's a bunch of capabilities specific to Roku in terms of how to find the Roku device and things like that. In terms of the rest of the code, it's pretty much boilerplate. And then the actual code itself right now is a bunch of key presses. I wanted to show a real app like YouTube, so I can interact with system apps, but I can only do so using remote key press functionality. So that's what this demo uses. But you can certainly get more out of the driver if you're automating your own app, which is presumably what you'll be doing if you're running the driver itself. So I've got my Appium server running, and I'm just going to run this Roku session here. So off we go. And here's the YouTube app launching and doing its thing. And we're just going to go find some videos. I just have a static wait in here to make sure that we launch. And we're going to start apparently an ad, because that's what you mostly do on YouTube, is watch ads. So that is the demo for the new Roku driver. Now let's move on to talk about plugins. Plugins are bits of software that can modify the way that the Appium server works. They can do pretty much anything. So if you have any idea for how you want to change Appium to make it work differently, you can probably build that into an Appium plugin. We have the Images plugin, which gives you the ability to look for things on a screen based on an image instead of based on some kind of UI element hierarchy. So if you know what something looks like and you want to figure out where on the screen it is, you can use the Images plugin to do that. The Appium OCR plugin, OCR standing for Optical Character Recognition, is similar to the Images plugin in that it looks at an app merely as a screenshot, as a collection of pixels, rather than as a UI hierarchy. It lets you find a region of the screen based on the text that's present in that region of the screen, even if that text is not a part of the accessibility layer of the app at all, even if somebody drew it with a pen or something like that. We have the Alt Unity plugin, which lets you work with Unity games in a way that was previously impossible with Appium. There's a Reporter plugin that lets you report the status and other details of your tests after they're complete, and then gives you a nice website to look at, statistics and information about your test, as well as screenshots and what took place when you sent specific commands as part of your test. There's the Universal XML plugin. And this tries to unify the class names and attributes between iOS and Android applications. The Relaxed Capabilities plugin lets you use pre-W3C WebDriver spec capabilities and still launch an Appium session. Kind of a utility plugin, useful maybe if you're using an old WebDriver client or something like this to try and talk to the Appium server. There's also a Device Farm plugin, which lets you kind of manage devices and run Appium tests on multiple devices at the same time, things like that. We're going to do 5 plugin demos here. We'll start off with the Images plugin. Here is where you should go if you want to use the Images plugin to figure out how to get it set up and all the very many capabilities and settings and features that it provides. What we're going to do for now is we're going to pretend that we have an application with a bunch of elements that are very hard to find. We're going to use this Where's Waldo graphic as an example. We're going to pretend that this little red boat right here is an area in the screen that we want to interact with. What we need to do first is actually have an image of the part in the larger screen image that we want to find. Tell me where this image is on the screen so that we can interact with that screen region. So here's our code. We are going to look for the boat image in the screen. So we're just going to find the boat in the picture as an element, and then we're going to use element methods like getLocation and getSize to figure out where it is on the screen. Another cool feature is that we can actually get the visual attribute of this element, and that will give us a essentially a screenshot with the matched portion of the image highlighted in red. So now let's go ahead and run this test. I've got my iOS simulator here. Once it launches and reads the screen, we'll attempt to find the boat in that larger screenshot, and it did so. And to know that we got it right, we can go ahead and open up the Finder here and look at the screenshot with our boat highlighted in red. So that is exactly the region that we were looking for. And onto the OCR plugin. You can find it at my GitHub repository here at this URL. We're going to use this sample app I have here, and we're going to pretend that this login screen element is actually not a regular UI element that we can find using normal locator strategies. So here's our code. It's got a bunch of boilerplate, and then here's our test. Most important thing here is that first thing we do is switch into the OCR context, and that will give us a different kind of page source that lets us look for elements simply by their text that the OCR engine has discovered, and switch back into native mode to determine that we ended up in the place that we intended to go. So let's run this test here. If it works, we won't see anything fancy. We'll just see the app go to the next screen based on what the OCR engine said the text was, and that's exactly what happened. And now let's move on to the Alt-Unity plugin. I have here a simple game running on Android that was developed in Unity. It's one of their sample games, and it has the Alt-Unity tester SDK installed, so it's ready to receive test commands from the outside world. To start off, we've got our game APK. We're going to be running on Android, obviously. I've defined a touch action, essentially a keyboard action, using the keyboard to press a key down and hold it for a certain duration and then let the key go up. And we get to our actual test code here. First thing we do is switch into the Unity context. That lets the plugin know we want to talk to Alt-Unity tester running in our Unity game rather than the native Android UI elements. And we find our player. And what we're going to do is figure out where it is in the world, its X position in the world. This is the world X attribute. We're going to perform our press right action, which will move the player to the right by holding down the right arrow. And we then get the X position of the player again and assert that it is greater than our initial X position. Driver will launch our app. We'll switch into the Unity context, press right for 3/4 of a second, and our assertion passed. And the place to go for information about the Reporter plugin is the Appium test distribution project. We're going to go through a basic login flow in my sample app. But then we're going to do a little bit of magic in our test cleanup. The Reporter plugin running in the Appium server itself is going to remember that data and give us a nice view of our test status when we go and look at it in our web browser. So we'll run this little test here. It's going to launch the app and go through a basic login flow on it. And that's all that's going to happen. So to see the report, we can go to the Appium server /get report. You can see I've run this a couple times while this server is running. So here is our overall execution summary. Get a nice view of the tests that have run and their status. And you can even drill down into a test and look at screenshots every step of the way. Finally, we have the Universal XML plugin, both an iOS and an Android application. So we're going to have just one locator that we're using. We're going to be looking for this AXID, short for accessibility ID, attribute on any element in the view. So let's run the test here. I believe we've got iOS first, so we'll look at this. So we're going to just click an element in iOS, and then we're going to click the same element using the same locator in Android. So that's part of the benefit of the Universal XML plugin. So that concludes our tour of the Appium ecosystem. Very fast, very rough. The idea is just to give you a sense of what's out there so you can go and explore more on your own. And that's it from me for TestFlix 23. Thank you for your attention. And I really hope that you explore this ecosystem and add to it. Write a driver or a plugin of your own and share with the world. That's what we'd love to see. Thanks. See you later.